Well, and we are thrilled to welcome Randy Bachman. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you're here because you're getting inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame.
Yep.
How it hasn't happened already, I don't know, but good.
It happened once.
Did it?
When I was with the Guess Who, yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, so the Guess Who has been
years
inducted
ago.
as a band?
Yes.
I thought they had, and then we were looking into it. So this is number
my
2
moment.
for you.
This is all you.
This is your
That's
great.
what I thought. Yeah.
it should be.
I want to read something because this, I was looking at your website, and this is just such a, I mean, the Guess Who, BTO, the number of hits, it's like 40 million records. But also this says, by 1970, the Guess Who had sold more records than the entire Canadian recording industry to that point. My
And those weren't
God.
sold in Canada.
Yeah, right,
They were sold
exactly.
out of Canada. That was the reason why. We pretty much left Winnipeg and went and toured the States, and that's where we kind of exploded.
Yeah.
What was the first moment when you thought, this is it, we're getting there, we made it?
Well, there's many moments you think that's it, and then after that, there's the crash, right? So the big one, I think, was when Burton Cummings joined the band. He and I started writing together. We wrote These Eyes. It was a million seller. We're on American Bandstand. Dick Clark gives you your gold record. That was like, oh my God, everyone's watching this, because I used to watch American Bandstand every Saturday morning in Winnipeg to see what the guys looked like, because you only heard them on radio, and you wanted to see what Chuck Berry looked like, and the Shirelles or the Marvelettes or whoever it was. So being on that was like a real milestone to be on American Bandstand. And I've known Dick Clark all his life, you know, for all my life for that whole period of time. I've done many shows with him.
What's a bit of the backstory on American Woman? That was a huge hit, but a really controversial song, and people were reading, I think people were trying to read all kinds of things into that.
They were, and we did it at the end of 5 or 6 million sellers. And even though it was a war protest song, they didn't realize that, because American radio at the time couldn't play any war protest songs. It was the late 60s, it was Vietnam. And we were actually singing about the Statue of Liberty and that statue, Uncle Sam Wants You, you know, the Stars and Stripes hat.
Yeah.
It was like the whole draft kind of thing. They had tried to draft us, the guys in the Guess Who, crossing the border, big healthy Canadians with green cards, which means you want to live in the States, work in the States. By the way, you can put on this uniform.
Are you draftable?
Here's a rifle,
when
yeah,
you
when you have a green card, yeah. So we escaped basically the draft board on this one trip, which they politely called selective service, which I didn't know what it was until you find out. Then you come back to Canada. We came back to Canada, didn't have a gig, so we got booked in Kitchener-Waterloo in a curling rink.
Yeah.
Real Canadian dance. They put plywood on the ice.
My hometown.
Yeah, everyone
Love
comes
it.
in to dance, and I broke a string in the middle of a song. So Burton Cummings said, we're going to take a break while Randy changes the string. I was changing the string, put it on my guitar, and started to tune it up. I started to play dun dun dun.
That's how you got that riff?
Dun 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 dun. Right on my knees on stage behind the piano in the dark, because I didn't even have a tuner. I'm tuning to Burton's electric piano, and the whole crowd's their head snaps, and I stand up, and I'm all alone. And I don't want to stop playing this because I'll forget it.
Right.
So I keep playing. The band comes on stage, and they all start playing and singing. And Burton comes on and say, "Sing anything."
You're kidding.
And he sings American Woman Stay Away From Me about 7 or 8 times, and we solo, and he sings it again. And then we do it the next night, and he says, I want to add in a lyric about a war machine and the ghetto scenes. Like, put it in, put it in. And it's easy to add in because there's no chords. It's that one riff, Sly and the Family Stone, kind of a dance kind of thing over and over and over. And that song came out, and it was basically Canadians singing an anti-war or a protest song. And the radio programmers didn't catch in on it. They thought it was the woman on the street we were singing about.
Right. Like somebody had a bad experience with an American woman.
Yes. And so it was #1 record, and then they realized, oh, these guys are singing they don't like the war machines and that kind of thing.
I've heard it a million times. I turn it up loud every single time.
Well, Randy, you have so many stories. I saw you perform at this Canada's Walk of Fame. They were thanking their donors. It was last year. You performed for just maybe 15, 20 minutes, and you told these little snippets, these little great stories about the songs, how they came to be made.
That's happening this Thursday at the Winter Garden Theatre. I'm doing a whole evening telling the stories behind about 15 of my hit songs, and we've got visuals that go way back to the 60s and 70s. So it'll be a whole evening of me telling how the Guess Who got our name, which was an accident, how BTO got their name, which was an accident, how a lot of these songs were written on stage or were accidental things that I've just learned to sit back and go, go ahead and happen. Yeah, I'll roll with this. Let it happen. Yeah.
That's serendipity. And I don't know if you can appreciate it. I don't think you can appreciate it in the moment. It is only with the benefit of hindsight that you can go back and go, look at that.
Exactly.
What are the odds that could have happened, right?
Because even now, I don't know what's going to happen this week.
But
This
You know,
is
you
what,
look back at the end of the week and go, oh my God, look, this happened, this happened, that
happened.
happened.
It was on that morning show. And
Yeah, exactly. I watch it every
Everything
morning,
took
and
off.
I'm here. I should be at home watching myself.
On your bike,
I know.
we could get the people together who watch this show because Gordon Lightfoot said he watches the show. You watch it. We would have an all-star band on.
You would.
That would be. We got to
Listen,
work
you're
on
over-
that.
you
Have a
have a
bunch of
home on-
exercise bikes, and I'll just sit here and pedal.
You have a home out on the Gulf Islands
Salt Spring Island.
in British Columbia,
Yeah.
and you've got this big guitar collection. What's the scope of this thing now? Because this kind of become a legendary hoarding thing.
I sold half of it.
Oh, you did?
I had a call from Fred Gretsch, who's Gretsch Guitars, and he said, Martin has a museum, Gibson has a museum, everybody has a museum.
Yeah.
You own my museum.
Yeah,
Because when you make guitars to sell them, you don't collect them.
Yes.
I was a crazed collector.
Yeah.
So I sold them 385 Gretsch guitars, which are now the Gretsch Museum in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And so that took my collection down to about half. So I've still got about
Wow.
300.
I'm more curious about, in 2005, you launched your own radio show called Vinyl Tap.
Yeah.
And you just play. You just play and you just chat.
Well, that whole show was done as an accident, kind of as a challenge. And I heard that Danny Finkelman, who had Finkelman's 45s, every Saturday I'd listen to that, just puttering around the house. And I heard he was retiring. I figured, how tough is it to play music? How can you retire from playing music? Like, I'm never going to retire.
Yeah.
And I was doing Stuart McLean's Vinyl Cafe, and I said, how come this guy's retiring? I could do his show. And they said, okay, do a demo. So I went and did a demo. I thought, what can I do? Well, I'll play records like as normal, but I'll tell my story of meeting Brian Wilson and touring with the Beach Boys, my story of Elvis and taking care of business, which is his motto on his tombstone. And I'll tell my own stories when I'm playing other people's music.
Yeah.
And I did that for a joke for the summer. Then at the end of that summer, I was 10 shows. I lost about $600 doing that because I went and bought records that were scratchy, bought new ones. And they had a strike at CBC. And they called me and said, we can't let anyone cross the picket line. Can we play your 10 shows again? I said, sure, I don't care. I mean, I was done.
Yeah.
And so they started to play them again in September. And by the time they settled the strike, they took the fall book of ratings, and my show was like #1 in the ratings. So they said, would you do the show for the whole year? And I said, do you mean a J-O-B? A real job? And they said, yeah. So I started to do that, and that was like 6 years ago. And
got a
then
little angel on
the
your
show has
shoulder.
gone up and up in the ratings.
Amazing.
There's a little angel on your
Yeah,
shoulder.
so that's what I'm doing with my own music on Saturday at the Thursday at the Winter Garden.
Right.
Telling
Telling
those
the
stories
stories.
behind the 15 or so hit songs for the Guess Who and BTO.
And then Saturday, September 22nd, you will be inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame. Paul Schaefer's hosting. You know him?
Sure, he was the kid in the front row in Thunder Bay every time the Guess Who played in
Stories
Port Arthur.
he's
We'd go
got.
there every Christmas Eve, the 23rd, and Schaefela was in the front row, and he'd come and talk to Burton. He was a little piano player, and he'd talk to Burton about stuff. I've done Letterman with him many times. He's on the Bachman Turner live DVD we did at Roseland. So he's flying in to induct me. He just called me and said, will I do a skit with him with the first Canadian hit, Shakin' All Over, and the latest one, which is Call Me Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
So he said, we might have wigs and might do a Wayne's World thing. I said, whatever you want, I'm in.
Fabulous.
Well, we're going to go to that.
We're going to be there.
Oh,
so we
yeah.
can't
Oh,
wait
good,
to see
good,
it. Yeah,
good.
we'll be there. So that happens on September the 22nd, and then it's being taped, of course. Global will air that on October the 14th. Randy Bachman, what a pleasure. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.